Madam Web is like that kind of movie you hear about getting cancelled in pre-production and then the script gets leaked years later and you think, oh, I can definitely understand why that didn't get made into a movie. Instead, Madam Web is being made into a movie, and it will hit theaters this Friday, and I don't have anything good to say about it, but let's talk about it now. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today, yes, we're diving into all of my spoiler-free thoughts on Madam Web. Thank you to Sony Pictures for giving me the chance to watch this early for review. I was at a press screening at my local AMC, and let me tell y'all, I was the only critic in that screening. I almost wonder if the others were too scared to venture into what is Madam Web. The film is rated PG-13 and runs a very long hour and 57 minutes. It's directed by S.J. Clarkson and written by 4 screenwriters. Red flag. But then I saw things like the cinematographer being the same cinematographer from Spider-Man No Way Home, Mauro Fiore. And then you have the cast, who, I'm not gonna lie, the actors in this film, they have a good track record. I mean, they are good. Dakota Johnson, Adam Scott, Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Merced, and then you have Celeste O'Connor and someone who I've only heard about, Tahar Rahim, who plays Ezekiel Sims, the villain. Now, there's so many things wrong with this movie, you guys. So, before I get into it, let's talk a little bit about the actual premise. Madam Web is a story centering around Cassandra Webb, a paramedic in Manhattan who develops the power to see the future, and then realizes that she can use this insight to change the future. Now she's forced to confront revelations about her past as she forges a relationship with 3 young women bound for powerful destinies, if they can all survive a deadly present. Thrilling. That's probably the most thrilling part of this entire movie is the summary. Now, before, again, we get into my pros and cons, guys, if you're here at this point in the review, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and let me know down below in the comments what you think of Madam Web when you see it, or what you think of my review, because I have to imagine, and not many people are going to watch this movie and genuinely expect it to be good, because, let me just get this off my chest. This movie is horrendous. There's only one possible positive I can pull out of my hat here, and it is Adam Scott. He's innocent in this movie. The fact that he has to play Uncle Ben in a universe, a cinematic universe, that really is going to have no sort of weight moving forward is insane. But he tries. He at least tries. He gets served a hot pile of garbage as a script, similar to the other actors and his castmates here, but he at least tries and doesn't give an over-the-top poor performance. He's really working as hard as he can with the terrible material that he's given, and there are glimpses where you can start to see an Uncle Ben in this timeline, and I see that when he's in the hospital with Mary, Peter's mother, and it's just very interesting to see how they try to connect the dots in a way and set a sort of stage for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but we know that's not happening. And honestly, that's the only positive I have in this movie, because now I want to just get everything off of my chest about how awful Madam Web was as a film. This movie is just tragic. And the thing is, you almost expect it to understand how bad it is at some point and maybe turn the tides by the midway point. But this movie doubles down on the awful dialogue, the awful acting, and the awful direction. I mean, I say awful direction, and that almost gives it too much credit because the movie is directionless. The film doesn't know what it wants to be. Doesn't want to be a thriller, doesn't want to be a superhero film, doesn't want to be a drama, or doesn't want to be a character study of who Cassandra Webb is. Instead, it tries to be all of those things. And that's one of the big issues I had with this movie. You have 4 screenwriters, and whenever a film has more than 2, generally speaking, it's going to be a poorly written script because there are too many hands in the pot. and I felt that from the beginning to the end of Madam Web. There were awful lines of dialogue, cringe scenes where you understand that the movie has no idea what it wants to do, especially in the diner where somehow all of our Spider Women here, they just don't understand what they want to be. See, Sydney Sweeney is supposed to play this naive young woman, and she's supposed to be kind of innocent, right? And then you have Celeste O'Connor, who's playing the rebel, and she kind of fits that role just fine, but sometimes has character turns and moments where I'm like, that your character was not like this literally a scene ago. And then you have Isabella Merced playing Anya Corazon, who is supposed to be a nerd in every sense of the word, in a good way, of course. She's a genius, and she doesn't dress the part in a way, so none of them know how to play their role well. And that's a big fault to the director and to the writers, because they don't know how to write for these roles. And I feel bad because they're good actors, they just get served a terrible script and really bad direction. And honestly, while I enjoy the acting from Dakota Johnson in almost everything I've seen her in, I can't blame people for walking out of Madam Web and probably pointing at me and asking, really? You enjoy this acting? 90% of the fault I have with Dakota Johnson in this movie is due to the script and the direction. 10% of that is probably due to her acting. This is not a good performance. I'm sorry. Her and Tahar Rahim have two of the worst performances in this movie. It's very forced, incredibly generic, and it's reminiscent of the early 2000s superhero movies that we've all come to not like, and of course they don't age well. And honestly, this movie makes Fantastic Four and that sequel with the Silver Surfer much more bearable. The movie so often tries to help us understand Cassandra Webb and her motivation and tie it back to her mother, who was a researcher in the Amazon and died while carrying Cassandra Webb. And yeah, let me tell y'all, bro, these flashbacks, they were awful. They try to make them very dramatic, and it does not help that the cinematography doesn't aid what we're watching, and the framing, and these very weird and awkward and hilarious, because I laughed, zoom-ins. What the cinematographer does, whenever there's conflict between Ezekiel Sims and Cassandra Webb, our antagonist and protagonist, there's always this very weird zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. It feels like I'm watching a awful parody of a superhero movie. It cheapens the scene and all of the drama and work that's trying to be injected into the moment. I don't understand what happened. Who thought that was okay? How did that get greenlit? And how did this make it off the cutting room floor? And there are plenty of laughable moments with Tahir Rahim, who plays Ezekiel Sims, an antagonist who is trying to kill these spider women because he feels they are going to kill him due to a vision that he has and has been having for years. So what does he do? Of course, he enlists in this NSA super security device that will literally find anyone anywhere by use of facial recognition software, run by a super genius computer operator whom he basically coerces into doing the dirty work for him. It's so surface level, it's so generic, and it is just awful work. Tahar Rahim began the movie on a rough note because his line delivery seemed kind of wooden, and then it continued. He didn't know how to really inject a lot of life into the role, and instead there were moments where he would say things that felt like it was stripped from a comic book in the worst way. Things like, we have to find them before they find me, they will destroy me. Just like that, and that maybe even had more range. And I don't understand. Who thought that was a good idea? There are things that you can adapt from a comic book that will only work with a comic book, and you shouldn't bring them to the big screen. So stay away from those things. Instead, all of that is brought into Madam Web, and not even the action is enjoyable. Guys, the bare minimum is at least make the action okay. Instead, it feels like they did all of this in a day. The CGI is awful and so choppy. You have terrible sequences where cars drive through buildings and it feels like it's so darn fake. And I get it, it's not real. No one's actually getting hit with a car and possibly dying. No. But instead, This feels like it did not make it past any stage of post-production where they cleaned up certain things. It's awful. The editing, the choppy cuts between scenes, and don't get me started on the power displays for Madam Web. Now, my good friend over at Geekly Goods, Leo Rydell, and I were talking after the film, and he even brought it up as well. The actual power display by Madam Web is laughable, you guys. I mean, the way that you see like a shutter, like a blink of an eye over across the screen, and she starts to see the different timelines, it's awful. It's not even fun to witness. And then when she shows her big power display at the end of the movie, even that looks terrible. I was thinking, are we stuck in 2001? What is going on here? And if you followed even an ounce of the film's marketing, you would probably expect our Spider Women to show the costumes and fight in the costumes that they're in. Okay, they sort of do that in the movie, but I'm gonna have to be honest with you. We get Julia, Anya, and Maddie, the Spider Women trio, right, in their actual suits for 30 seconds of total screen time, and it's all in flashbacks or flash forwards. It's never in real time, and they never actually have an action set piece with their costumes, and that goes for Madam Web also. We see her costume at the end of this movie, and when I tell you this is arguably the worst superhero costume I've seen in the past decade, I'm not exaggerating here, you guys. It might be the past 2 decades. It looks incredibly cheap, and you can tell that the costume designs were not well thought out. I want to say that Julia's looks fine, honestly. Everyone else, though, looks just absolutely cheap. What are they trying to accomplish here? They're building towards something that they want to make a reality, which is a Sinister Six sort of thing with Kraven, Morbius, Venom, Madam Web, all that. They want to build towards that, and they want Tom Holland back. They just won't get that. I'm sorry. Kevin Feige is going to watch this and think, oh my gosh, thank God that we have Tom Holland playing Spider-Man in our cinematic universe, and he's not being loaned to Sony, and we don't have to make it canon between the two companies, because that would ruin and tarnish this generation's Spider-Man. I'm so glad they're not going that route. But they want to, and they so desperately want to connect everything, especially during the film. When people are like, oh, Mary, what's the name of your baby? We're going to play a guessing game at our baby shower. Guess, Richard, so on and so forth, Simeon, whatever, and Samuel. And she's like, no, that's not the name of my baby. My baby's name isn't. A balloon pops. So it's like, you know, they're trying so hard to infuse Peter Parker into this and Spider-Man and Aunt May, but it's not going to happen, you guys. I'm sorry. This is just a train wreck from start to finish. There's no redeeming qualities about Madam Web. It is a 0.5 star out of 5. It's going to probably be a bottom 5 movie of the year for me, and it is the worst superhero film in the past decade. It's tragic. It feels like to me that everyone that was involved in this, all of the actors, they got a paycheck. They were probably happy, and they said, sure, fine, I'll just do this. Because to me, it felt like no one had chemistry. It didn't look like anyone was having fun on set. And I have to say, I just can't not recommend this movie enough. There's not even a post-credit scene, and I'm kind of glad, but I did stay and watch just to make sure. There's no post-credit scene. Don't stay. Once the credits hit, once they roll, leave, if you're even watching this movie. But if you're not, and you only watched this review, and you enjoyed everything I had to say, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and give me a comment down below, and let me know, y'all. What are your thoughts now that I've given you all of my thoughts on Madam Web? Does it exactly meet your expectations, or are you a little curious now and want to watch this film? If you do, please let me know what you think, because I can't be alone here, right, guys? Madam Web is just a total failure, and yeah, I just don't see how they can continue with the Sony cinematic universe. What was that? Oh, Kraven the Hunter's next? Oh man, oh, I can't wait to watch that one, y'all. But until then, that's all I got for Madam Web, you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they're still making these movies.